The Lord of the Rings games were a massive hit and viewed as one of the greatest movie trilogies ever made. Some people see it in the same light as the original Star Wars trilogy, and I totally understand why. Those movies are fantastic. So naturally, there would be video games based on them so fans could dive into Middle-earth and partake in the War of the One Ring. The two games we're going to focus on are the hack and slash games published by EA, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Now I know what you're thinking, wasn't there a game for the Fellowship of the Ring? Yes, there was, but it's nothing like the two most popular games that everyone thinks of, mostly because it was made by an entirely different studio and plays more like an action-adventure game than a hack and slash. Anyway, the reason why The Two Towers and Return of the King were so popular was because it heavily focused on the big battles of the films. As far as the story goes for both, you're playing through most of what you see in the movies, with a few things added to the game. Certain encounters are stretched out and made more exciting with boss fights and additional conflicts. But the main concern we have here is whether the games were actually good. Many people have a lot of nostalgia for both of these games, and praise them a ton. Is that really justified, or a complete fool of a Took's recollection for both of these games?
We cannot wait to Aragorn!
The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is the first to get released by EA. It came out a few months before the film was in theaters, which doesn't happen often. What's weird is how the game is mostly based on the events from the Fellowship of the Ring rather than just The Two Towers. But there's a legit reason for that. EA was originally going to make a Fellowship of the Ring game just like this in time for the film's release, but plans fell through and they decided to include everything from there into The Two Towers instead. What we get is a game that feels like it's including a lot more than what's advertised, which wouldn't be a bad thing if it wasn't for how most of the game is just leading up to the Battle of Helm's Deep, the climactic battle in The Two Towers. Much of the big plot points are covered but not detailed. This is a movie-based game after all, and they want to get you into the action of the gameplay without spoiling too much of the movie already. Speaking of gameplay, this is where I feel the game suffers. While the foundation of The Two Towers is good, the execution is very bad. Hacking and slashing orcs is a good thing, but it's overshadowed by terrible bugs and very poor hit detection. Things could get very annoying. You could play as 3 different characters, each with their own special attacks, but they all control the same. You can argue that Legolas is a little faster, while Gimli is a little bit stronger, and Aragorn is a blend of both of them. But in my experience, I honestly feel like there's little to no difference between them. They encounter the same challenges and suffer from the same problems. The glitches and bugged out enemy AI nearly ruin the experience if you're not able to exploit aspects of the combat. Whether that means spamming certain attacks or hitting enemies in a certain way, you'll feel like you're just gaming the system rather than taking on the armies of Mordor. Now, most things in The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King are a little bit better. The game came out a month before the theatrical release of the movie in 2003 for multiple platforms. The story is pretty much the same, with key events of the film being playable. This time, however, you could have even more characters to play as than before. You could play as Gandalf, Sam, Frodo, and a few others. There's a total of 9 playable characters, with 3 of them being unlockable. There's also some variety to the gameplay too, including environmental interactions. The story of Return of the King also has a lot going on for it, from Frodo's journey to Mount Doom with Sam, the return of Gandalf, and Aragorn's travels to Minas Tirith. The game is split into 3 main arcs, leading up to the final battle against Sauron and the destruction of the One Ring. While this game is more faithful to the movie compared to its predecessor, it also has a myriad of problems that dampen the majority of the experience. Much like in The Two Towers, Return of the King is plagued by problems with its gameplay. Despite the many improvements that were made, things like bugs, glitches, and harsh difficulty spikes are present. While you can play through the game with a friend in co-op, it doesn't do much to remedy any of the major problems. Battling enemies in every stage will have poor collision detection and glitches that can break the game in a few places. Imagine being unable to escape damage from hazards or enemy attacks because of the bad camera placement or poor collision. This can end up forcing you to replay areas multiple times unnecessarily. There's also a problem with the objectives that require you to rush between areas before being overrun by enemies. The timing you're given could go away way too quickly, once again forcing you to replay everything. There are some checkpoints within the stages, but they aren't that great and have very weird placements here and there. What's here is still definitely better than what came before, but not so much to the point that it couldn't have been tweaked a little bit more. What's in there now can still be frustrating to play through.
What kind of an army would linger in such a place?